And now what we'd like to do is turn to our next speaker, Brian Moore from FMI, further to give us some recommendations and action steps that you can take back to the ground.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Jim. Like Mike, I will not sit here and profess that I know what's going to happen in the construction economy. I don't think anyone can truthfully say when it will turn around. So how do we plan for that? What do we do given that there's significant turbulence in the market? We can see positive signs in the greater economy, but when is the construction economy going to turn around? And more specifically, when is your specific area going to turn around is very important to you to keep an eye on. And what I wanted to do, given we've only got just a short time to talk about what do we do given the market signals that we've got. What I hope you'll walk away with here really is just a 5-point plan. If you do nothing else in your business, if you walk away with these 5 points and think about these things, you will have done a lot towards planning for turbulence. Just keep in mind, even in a down market, even when the construction market is going down, contractors are still making money. Some contractors still make money even in bad times. The key is to be one of those contractors. Those 5 things, look beyond your backlog. Your backlog is not the only thing you need to help you manage your business. Plan for changing times. Times are always changing. You need to have a planning process to plan for changing times. Once you have that plan, align your organization accordingly. Focus on profitability. Mike talked about maximizing profitability. The best opportunity isn't the projects you could win, it's the projects you already have. So focus on profitability on those projects. And remember you have a leadership position in your company, and you have to remember that and act as a leader. We'll sort of walk through each of these and talk more specifically about what we mean. When we talk about looking beyond your backlog, one of the problems with a lot of management teams is we get stuck in conventional wisdom. We look at our backlog and we use backlog to make our management decisions. How much new work do we need? What sort of overhead cuts do we need, et cetera. There are other things you can look at. Internally, some things that we suggest you look at is looking at your backlog and pipeline quality indicators. That is, how good is the backlog we have, and how good is the work that's likely to come in. Your backlog margin spread, that is looking at the margin that's in your backlog compared to overhead, and look at cash flow on a monthly basis, and use that to determine when do we need to make certain decisions. Liquidity indicators, looking at cash usage and needs, recognizing that cash is the only thing you can spend. You can spend nothing else except cash. You can have a lot of sins in your business, but the one sin is you can't run out of cash. Those are some internal things you can look at. Externally, looking at the Architectural Billings Index, we looked at that earlier this morning. Looking at FMI's non-residential construction index, CFMA's confidence index, and local market data to help you make decisions in your business, helping to break potentially conventional wisdom. One of my colleagues has a saying that goes something like this: that your business is perfectly structured to proceed to achieve the results you're currently achieving. If you want to change the results in your business, you need to do something to change your business. Performance problems come when strategy is no longer aligned with the context. When we talk about strategy and strategic planning, we're talking about planning your business given the context. That is the climate, the customers, your competitors, and your internal strengths and weaknesses in your company. And as we've all seen over the past couple of years, the context has changed. The question is, has your strategy changed to keep up with that? If it hasn't, then we need to address that. Look, what we hope you'll do is understand that as this context has changed, you need to be looking at what new climate conditions exist, what new customers and market conditions exist, what new competitor dynamics do we see. One is obviously there are more competitors who are going after work. What's going on in our company? Are there things that we're better at than we used to? We're not as good as we used to be. And this all leads into a new context, and therefore should lead into new strategy. What you'll see is that performance will improve when your old strategy is retooled to fit the new context. So look beyond your backlog, understand the context you're in, and have planning processes focus on that context to break out of the conventional wisdom. The next thing is looking at, if you'll flip through these and bring all of them up at one time. Recognizing that for the next year, 18 months, your mission is going to be a little bit different than it may have been a year ago. Recognizing that your mission may just be to survive and still be around, you need to have contingency plans in place that take into account various scenarios. How deep is the downturn going to be? How long is it going to be? And have business development plans, operations plans, financial plans, HR plans, given various scenarios that you understand that could happen in your marketplace. And you have to do this. You need to do this in your business on a regular basis. And then out of that comes some things that we could do. When you go through and think about what could happen in our business and what we need to do, you can usually come up with a fairly long list of things that we need to do these 17 things. But what do you do first? Most businesses, many businesses get paralyzed by the significant amount of things that they could do. What we suggest is recognizing that the things you need to do first are those things that have significant impact and are easy to do. Do those things first and you'll improve your business. And then focus on the things that have a big impact that are a little bit harder. And then write on down the list and prioritize your strategies accordingly. Once you have your strategy devised, how do you align your organization? You got a plan. How do you get people to do it? Well, what you need to do is look internally and identify what competencies and capabilities that strategy requires in your business. As context change, customers change, new competencies and capabilities are required. They may not match with what we're currently good at. So we need to understand what does our strategy require and what are we good at, and make sure we're putting together a plan, typically an organizational development plan, to make sure we're getting the right skills and competencies of people to match with what our new strategy is. Internally, we need to look at, once we've aligned ourselves externally with the new market conditions, how do we align ourselves internally? Well, we have to define performance characteristics for everyone in our organization. What factors are important for everyone in our organization? Make sure we understand our core values and use our core values in individual performance. We talk about adjusting overhead to match the market realities. A lot of times, a lot of my clients that we're having to scale back our organization. The question is, how do we do that? It's very difficult to let people go when you have to do that. Typically, we've been with us for quite some time. How do you make those decisions? It needs to be made on a performance and values basis and understanding who fits long term with our organization, not necessarily who's been here for a long term. Once you have your plan in place, your organizational plan to align everyone, you have to communicate to everyone in your organization what that plan is. And I'll put this up here because communication has so many opportunities for something to go wrong. If you think about what communication is, it's you sending a message to another individual through some either email or verbal or a town hall meeting, and they've got all this noise that's going on in their life. They had an argument with his wife, they had a bad day. There's all kinds of opportunities for something to go wrong in communication, and we need to recognize that. There's an age-old debate. Do we cut overhead or do we get more productive? Mike says get more productive. We say get more productive. Most contractors say there's lots of opportunity for us to cut out a little bit of waste in our field operations. That cutting out of waste is profit that goes straight to the bottom line. Like I said, focus on the backlog you already have as opposed to the projects you may be getting. The way you do that really is focusing on the 5 key things of productivity. Pre-job planning, short-interval planning, daily huddles, exit strategies, and post-job reviews. Use that as a checklist to go through and say, which of these things do we have consistency on, and which of these things do we do well, and where do we have potential failures where we could do better. And then finally, the last thing is recognize that you as a leader have to drive the organization, and remember that people are looking to you for how they really react to the situation. As a leader in your company, the rest of your company looks to you to try to get some sort of a sense for do we have a plan? Where are we heading? Do we know what we're going to do? And how should I be reacting